Okay, test it now. See if it's working now. This one's back on. This one's back on now. We're good? All right, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. New system and the microphone thing went out.
Ask them if they're watching through the phone. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're just trying to get this system going. Are you watching through the app? Maybe if you are, should I say maybe you put a 1 in there in the box? Is there a comment box?
We just want to know if they're viewing, so we just set up the whole system. Talk about
Yeah, we just set up the whole system. The app is fairly new, as you know, this summer. It's been a process just working out the difficulties and bugs. So this is our first Scratch Golf Live that's through the app. I know you can also get it at the website with the link that was sent out to you. We're just curious to know roughly how many people are on the app watching it on their phone or tablet, and how many people are on their computer. I think Matt did. Hey guys, hang in there with us. I'm sorry. Ignore that question. We're just working through on this first time, all the different technology. And we've been practice running it, believe it or not, but hopefully we're going to have a great hour, notwithstanding the slightly slow start with that. So how many we have a number of people on there?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So wow, we've got a pretty big crowd. Again, sorry for the slow start. Sorry for the microphone problems. I had fresh batteries, but somehow it shorted out. Pleased to be with you. It's a hot evening here in Naples. I know many of you are probably further north than this. Pretty hard to be much further south unless you're all the way in the other hemisphere, though. But we're still got hot weather. It's nice, to be honest with you. And excited to be with you. So type those questions in. We're looking forward to getting going. I'll try to be as helpful as I can. Always enjoy. In fact, I often know some of the people that send the questions in just because they've come for lessons, or they're local people that I know that are Scratch Golf people. So I'm officially needing reading glasses here at this point. So let's
tell them to put in where they're from, and maybe.
Yeah, when you do put in your question, it's always interesting to know where you're from, these sort of things. You'd be surprised how many people stay up late and do this from Europe. Certainly from Western Europe there, where it's only a 5-hour difference. California could be if it's the afternoon. We get a lot of Midwestern people. John from St. Louis. Good to see you, John. Good to hear from you. We have a lot of St. Louis people here in Naples. Michael from Rhode Island. Love Rhode Island, one of my favorite states. So good to have you there, Michael. And again, feel free to start punching some questions in there as you go. So maybe name where you're from, and a question would be great. And I'll be getting those questions momentarily here at the phone. We'll have some. Daniel from Massachusetts. Paul from Detroit. Good to hear from you, Paul. We have a lot of people in Southwest Florida, from Michigan, Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kansas City, St. Louis, Toronto parts. That's kind of the neck of the woods that tends to come our way. Minnesota quite a bit. Generally more Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania, and up to Massachusetts is more on the East Coast. But that's changing a little bit, so we're pleased to have you. I've been in the Northeast a lot over the years, so I'm familiar with it. So just waiting for some questions to pop in, or I can tell you what I'm working on in my swing. Why don't I do that? Oh. So in my swing, I espouse a lot of these mental techniques in the videos about quieting your mind, being intentional but not over controlling it. I would have to say, as a testimonial to the Scratch Golf videos relative to my swing, I think I've made more meaningful change in my swing. Now, it's relatively subtle. I mean, my swing's not changed that much, but changes that I'd really worked on for a while. I would say I've made more changes in the last 4 years than in the previous 15, and I've hit a fraction of the balls in the last 4 years just because I'm busy and working full time and teaching and doing the videos and all that. I've hit a lot less balls and made a lot more change because I'm learning to use my mind better. So I make more swings away from the ball, get a good feel for what I'm doing, and I find it transfers. I'm learning to let go a little bit. It helps me play too, because I don't get to play that much, and if my mind's tight and you don't play a lot, it's tough out there. So what I'm working on right now, same stuff going back, trying to stay nice and centered. I tend to get a bit stretched and behind it, but for me right now, I'm really working on the start of the downswing, leaving my club in place a little bit and kind of getting my body going a little bit, just a fraction of a second. I have a tendency to get the arms down a bit, and that gets me behind the ball too much. Let's try one here. And I just find it's easier to get some pressure against the ground and get flowing through. So I'm sort of excited about that. So I'll hopefully hit a few balls tonight. Have we got a few questions yet? Let's have a look. Yeah, Mike. Begins with a B. My name's harder than your name, but I'm not going to. Biolosic from Columbia, Missouri. Help with squaring the face at impact. Now, most of the time, and I hate to do it to the lefties, I'll try to do the proper lingo as much as possible, but most of the time when people have a hard time squaring the face, what they usually struggle with is closing the face enough. So is there any way you can type in that's true or not true? See if that's the case.
Yeah, we can interact.
Okay, we can interact. So if you add that into your note, I can tell, but I'd be willing to bet 3 chances out of 4 that it is. So here's the thing. What you got to do, you got to get that grip. I can't see myself on the TV. Am I up fairly close? There we go. You got to get that grip where it's a little bit more cupped over there, okay? A little bit more like this. Most of the time, that means you've got to get it a little bit more in the fingers down there. Now, what you can do when you do that, who am I talking to again? Mike. So Mike, what you can do when you do that, hold the club up in front of you if you've got a club, take it with that grip, and just twist it a little bit towards the ground like that. That's the feeling you need in the downswing. And like anything, you have to overdo it a little bit to get the feeling. And once you've gotten too much of it, then you can start to neutralize. So as you come down, I want you to feel like you snap that thing closed and really start to hit some little screaming hooks. Now, you certainly couldn't see that ball, but I'm telling you, that thing had a low snap hook on it, and it's playing around with it. I'm telling you, folks, it's playing around with it to get your skill. Just trying to hit neutral good shots all the time will not get it for you. You have to play around a little bit and try to overdo it. So does that sort of help with the question? Did he say whether he's hooking it or not?
He says yes.
He is hooking it. Excuse me, leaving it open. Okay. So I want you to try that. And again, you got to be like a kid when you go out there, meaning you got to make some mistakes, play around and have some fun, and you'll get it sorted out there, Mike. But until you're hitting low hooks.
One thing that you should probably know
Yeah.
is every question can relate to everybody.
Yeah.
If they sit there and wait for their question, they may miss something golden.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Gary's just giving me a little coaching there. Every question that's asked, and maybe not everyone, but most of the questions frequently relate to other people that are in the conference. So, you know, if you, I know sometimes you want to just say, wait till your question comes up, but most of the time, by the time we're done with the hour, we've sort of had some questions that came in later that we've already answered before, come very close to answering. So Mike Robinson from Durand, Michigan. Been to Michigan a lot, never heard of that. I have a really bad habit of overusing my right hand and hooking it badly. Any drills that would help? Yeah. Now, I would say, people say this sort of stuff all the time, and in fact, they sometimes do it. Like I have no control over this trail hand. I personally, I've seen that a lot in golf swings. I'm not doubting that, but I personally don't believe that people have sort of some involuntary reflex that they can't control, or it would show up in other areas of their life. What usually happens is one of two things. Either the club face is too open, and subconsciously the brain, through trial and error, has figured it out. I need to whip the club a little bit to stop it from fading or slicing, and that sort of agitates it. Or they get themselves in a place with their body where they're stuck, they're not athletically moving enough, and when you get stuck with your body, all that speed in the club, unless you're the strongest golfer of all time, even then, that thing's going to flip on you. So make sure your grip is strong enough, make sure the face is pretty good coming down, it's not open. And secondly, you've got to feel some little shots. I would hit some punch shots. I've got an 8-iron here, where you can really engage your middle here and support those arms. If this club weighed 15 pounds, I couldn't do that. I'd have to move more. So I would hit some little shots like this. Nice, short, firm finishes, arms nicely firm against the body, and that will give you the ability to support the club, to sort of feel like the heel's more ahead of the toe as you go through impact. So check the face and check that, and I hope that'll be helpful for you there. Uh-oh, we got the questions coming and I've got to speed up. Hope that's helpful for you, Mike. Stuart, Paul. Stuart from Sydney, Australia. Wow. I can mimic your takeaway using my core like you, but when I put the club in my hands, instead of a tight pivot, it turns into a move away from the ball. Well, I appreciate you hanging in there from Sydney. That's one of the cities I'd really like to see there, Stuart. So far, no good. Here's what I would say. If your upper body is moving away from the target, as you're describing, you probably are turning a little too level. In other words, you're maintaining too much forward bend in your backswing, just as you have it addressed. So you've got to feel that your trail side, your right side, gets longer. So an exercise I think is great for that. Grip the club with this lead hand, leave the club on the ground, get just that trail hand, and just work it behind you like so. Picture roughly perpendicular to my body angle. Picture, if you like, there's some sort of a chandelier back there and I've got to reach back and touch it. And I think as you start to learn to stretch that right rib cage and sort of elongate that right side without moving this so much, you'll feel like your chest points more up, and I think that'll really help you stay centered. So when you do that drill, right hand for the right-handed golfer, right hand, then grab the club and try it. And I think you're sorted out. I really have come to like that drill. I've worked with that with a lot of people. Another thing you can do, if it's sunny, and I believe Sydney has good weather, get your shadow directly in front of you and make a few practice swings. That way you can see in real time if your shadow's moving. Okie doke. I hate to say it, folks, it's hot down here. Sweating a bit. Let's try. So number 4, Daniel Magalnik. How can you keep from bending upper torso down when rotating the swing down? I think what you're talking about there, Daniel, would be from this view getting nearer to the ground. I believe that's what you're saying. If you can type a Y in next to your question, Gary will check, but I'm pretty sure that's what you're saying. A little tiny bit of that actually isn't bad. You'll see a lot of great players do that. Just their instinct to sort of grab the mat or grab the ground, as it were, create some pressure so they can push up and hit it. But you don't want too much. I think what I would try to do is I would try to feel that your trail arm gets a little bit longer. Now you can do that and still have bend in the wrist. In fact, we want you to. But as that gets longer, it helps you stay taller. Your subconscious mind sort of judges one against the other, and I think pushing down will help you push up and feel a little bit taller. So that would be my thinking on that one. A little bit of it, as I say, isn't too bad a thing. Okay, we've got Peter Melville, preventing straightening up during the downswing. Poconos. Is that where you're from? Poconos? Is the Poconos Mountain or something? Okay, straightening up. Usually what that means is the hips are getting nearer to the target line, and as you lose your angle there, it pushes your body up. In fact, we're refilming the full swing course, and we should have that to you in a few weeks. Got a whole video in the middle of it on what they call early extension. I think you're really going to like. But it's just a case, again, of staying in balance. I'd work on it without a club and just feel like you can move freely, you don't get in your heels, you stay in balance, but you can slightly increase that angle as you go and keep moving. Then try it with the golf club a little bit. One little word of caution to you, though. Most of the time when someone suffers from that, the club gets too vertical, and then it's either jamming in the ground or you basically have to create space. So make sure steepness isn't an agitator that's causing you problems with that. Okay, let's keep going here. That was Peter. Mark, how to maintain mental focus through 18 holes? That's a good question there, Mark. I think I would say this, playing quite a lot helps. If you don't play a lot of golf, I don't play a lot these days, it's a little bit more difficult. Second thing is, everybody's a little bit different, just their innate personality styling, the way God's wired them up, the tendencies, and they have to find that sweet spot that works well for them. So what I mean by that, you get some players, Lee Trevino from yesteryear would be a classic example of that. He liked to chat and talk, joke with the crowd a little bit, crack jokes, and then get in there and hit. And it's almost like the more energy he created and interacted, it kept him loose, kept him going. Other players, Tiger Woods certainly, he's kind of a brooder, kind of a quiet guy during the round to his own thoughts. The key is, though, you have to, the only time you really have to be in it, you have to focus, is in that 20, 30 seconds where you sort of make your final decision, little practice move, and go in and hit the ball. And if that's all you really need, once the ball landed, you don't need it anymore. So if you only have to conserve your energy for those few little spots, or quite a few in a round of golf, but just short bursts, pick out between shots what mental setting works best for you, whether it's being more relaxed and chatty or hanging out by yourself. Conserve your energy in the way that's best for you. In other words, between shots, and turn it on when it counts. Even at that, some players a little less intense over the ball helps them. Okay. James Russell from Monterey, California. What a beautiful spot. Member for a couple of months, game getting better. Question is this. In the master course, you talk about the wrist as if there is supposed to be some conscious manipulation. Well, I mean, what's the name? Is it Mark? Yeah, Mark. No, sorry, James. Well, James, I mean, here's what I would say, whatever part of the swing, I mean, you'd like to not think. That's our ultimate goal, is to have it as a subconscious skill. But sometimes you've got to work on things a little bit consciously to get to that level. So whatever's a weakness, like for me, I never have to worry about width in my backswing. My arms always stay straight. I always have the handle in front of the ball pretty much at impact, certain things like that. But for me, getting behind the ball and getting a bit underneath the shot is a real problem. So I've constantly got to have a bit more of a sense of this. So if the wrists are a problem for you, certainly look at the video, check and see if your grip allows you to hinge. I mean, check and see if you've mastered the sense of closing the face properly. But the goal is, not that I've totally reached it with my backswing, the goal is, though, to get it to a subconscious skill. So if it's a fault in your game, if it's a flaw, hey, you're going to have to think about it a little bit just to get the improvement. You don't want to think too much on the golf course, though. You want to rehearse, get a feel for it, mental picture, and then go. So I hope that's helpful for you. Paul O'Neill, I have a good feel and get results after a lesson. I lose the feel after a few weeks. Is that quieting the mind issue? I hate to say this, Paul. That's just perfectly normal. David Ledbetter, my old boss, funny guy. David used to crack a lot of jokes, but one of the things he'd say, he said, this is just the 3 stages of golf. I've got it, I had it, I lost it. It's such a low margin for error game. You're moving the club so fast in such a big circle with so many variables, lie, club choice, win. It doesn't take much to just lose it a little bit. I just think that's normal. I mean, I think 2 things I'd say. Number 1, hang in there and just keep going and play through it. It'll come back just as it went away generally. And number 2, when you lose it a little bit, go to the things that are historically true of you. I know, for instance, I've said mine a few times today, get too much behind the ball, get over here, get stuck back here a bit. I don't think I've ever filmed myself after playing badly and been too much over here. So if you know your own tendencies and your own history, you sort of know where to go fishing for a fix, rather than just, hey, what does my friend think, or what did I read on the internet last night? Happenstance, that sort of a thing. So hang in there with yourself. 2 weeks isn't bad, actually. Tony Farrow, Binghamton, New York. Do you offer a class where we play a few holes on the golf course? Well, I teach down here in Naples, Florida, and certainly we have 2 great golf courses here. So if people schedule golf instruction down here, I can take them out on the course, especially at not peak times later in the afternoon or in the morning. So if you're in Southwest Florida, would be happy to have you. I'm probably going to start getting out and about and occasionally doing schools in a couple of locations. Was in Western Michigan maybe a month ago. So in those cases, we might be able to do it. Now we have, I don't know which level membership. Just look at your question again there, Tony. We do have on-course strategies and those sort of things that are part of the classes. Some of those are in the annual and lifetime membership. So there is on-course stuff there. Maybe that's what you were talking about. Okay. Brugers. John Elam from Virginia. How does a player go about, oh, John, I know you, go about practicing their distances and putting? Well, this is John. John's a really, really good player I've been working with online. He'd beat the heck out of me if we played. But nonetheless, I'm giving you advice. Distances, if you're talking full swing and you're as accomplished a player as you are, I would pick a flag out, say 140 yards. You have to laser it or whatever or know the distance. Get your normal club, hit some shots to that, and then take one club less and one club more, especially one club more, and try for not only the pin directionally, but the right distance. In other words, learn how to take a little speed out of it, maybe choke down a bit and take some yardage out, because one of the things that happens when you get on the golf course, many of the shots you hit, if not most of the second shots, are a little bit between clubs, and we have a tendency when we practice, blood gets pumping, start thumping it, muscles get loose, distance starts to rise a little bit, which is fun, but that doesn't prep you for all those when you're not as warmed up out on the golf course and you're in in-between yardage. In terms of, there was one other question you had there, John. Oh, geez, what a question. I just answered full swing distance control. Hopefully that's helpful for some people. You're talking about putting distance control. First thing, get the Scratch Golf app and look at the instructional video. Get the rhythm of your stroke as consistent as you can and use the instructional video there to help you select the rhythm that's best for you. There's a whole drill on that. And then I think one of the things I would do with my app ticking in my mind or down on the ground or whatever, just hit several putts in a row lined up to no hole. And the first putt, whether it's 15 feet, 35 feet, whatever the first putt is, you have an approximate sense, try to get the next 2 or 3 putts to go the same distance. So you're only thinking rhythm and distance control. And I can tell you, when you can hit 3 in a row, hit your metronome marks, and the ball's going about the same distance, several putts in a row, you have got the tools, you have developed the skill sets that'll help you be good at distance control. Then, of course, you putt to targets, but not just ball, target, ball, target. Okay, 12, Gary Hawk. I have a lot of difficulty hitting irons off a very short fairway grass in Florida as opposed to the longer fairway grass up north. It's not easy. There's no question about it. I'm 6 months north. Sorry, my phone just shifted there. That's all right. I'm 6 months north and 6 months south. Any suggestions? Well, I think the thing you've got to feel when you're hitting off short grass, this is an 8-iron, there's no grass growing on my FootJoy glove here, you have to tilt that club a little bit more to take that sweet spot and tilt it onto the ball. Effectively, slightly more of a downward hit. If you come in with a little bit of this, you can kind of pick under it if the ball's sitting up, but you've got to tilt it forward to get the right look. So video yourself for sure, use the app or just the camera on your phone, but we're not trying to savagely pound down. That is not what we're trying to do. Trying to be very level through the shot, but we're trying to get the handle past the golf ball before you hit it. That gets the sweet spot tilted. So maybe practice hitting some punch shots when you get down here. Low punch shots to get the feel. Film yourself. Again, if the divots get savagely deep, get away from it and go more level, but handle forward, tilt the sweet spot will solve it for you. It's just a little bit easier when there's more cushion under the ball. That's why, 99% of the time when these tour pros, they get on a par 3, they always use a tee. They may only tee it up a fraction, but it's just like giving themselves that perfect lie. It's just easier, even for them. Okay, Neil and Susan Silverman. Hello, Neil and Susan. When and how are you coming over the left hand as you come through the ball to close the face of the club and come through? Well, what people often do, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, not this specifically, but closing the face. But what people often do is they slash the club trying to get the club closed. And that, hey, it might close the face a little bit. You don't want all this activity. You want stability at impact for a foot or so. You want to picture hitting a baseball. You don't see a great baseball player bash it like this. So you want stability. So that means, hey, when the handle's forward, it tends to leave the face open. And that's because your hips and weight are forward. That's what you want. So you've got to turn the face a bit. So if you're in neutral, that face is going to have to look more like that to accommodate being square when your hands and hips are forward. So practice this feeling of snapping that club towards the ground. Now, I've done it a fair bit, so I can kind of distinguish that from something else. Some people, when they first do it, move everything. We're not saying that. Just tilt the face a bit. And again, work the face, and against that, work forward, shaft lean, and stability. And you'll have it. Just have to do it on a small scale a little bit there, and I think you'll get the feel for it in no time flat. So that's, thanks, Neil and Susan.
You can always use me if you ever need to.
For a model up here doing so?
Oh,
Oh, sure. Okay, great. Gary's offering to help sort of fill in some blanks here with some different things. James Bragg in New York City. Love New York City. Hope you guys are doing okay up there. Sometimes you hear news from other parts of the world, and it's like, wow, and and you find out the people are up there don't think it's that bad. So hopefully that's the case. Need help compressing irons and get higher ball flight. 7-iron and stronger iron balls not getting much height. Can't hold it or hit the green. More height off tee and drive the ball well. Well, stronger ball flight. Certainly compression, I mean, it's solid hit. It's not just, I mean, solid hit is in middle of the club face toe to heel. It's also, you've got to tilt a little bit of loft off it to get the ball compressed properly. Secondly, or thirdly, perhaps I should say, when you're coming in, it's got to be a fairly square hit. A lot of people get glancing hits one way or the other, especially this way. You get a little bit of a glancing hit. You're not going to compress the ball that well. And after that, again, as we were just saying in a question a minute ago, don't try to hit down too much to do that. That actually robs you of loft. You want to hit level. Actually, my glove as I hit would be slightly starting to ascend. I'm getting a little side bend in my body, or a little extension, if you want to call it that. So I'm not whacking down, but I'm taking advantage of compression, forward lean, but not doing it in a way that smacks the club down. The other thing, a lot of people fail to sort of grasp this, you know, the pros, they de-loft a club about 2 clubs at impact. So a 7-iron for Rory McIlroy would have about 5-iron loft at impact. That's what it's built to do. But he hits the ball so blasted hard, the harder you hit it, the more it will climb in the air and the more backspin you'll get. So some of it is just some speed. So I'd look at some of the factors in the videos that give you more speed. So solid hit, don't hit down too much, and create a little bit more speed. And those are the factors that'll get that ball up for you. Hope that's helpful for you, James. Ravi, given your videos are meant for the general population, is there any particular tips for golfers over 65? I get that question a lot, actually, Ravi, and I am fast approaching that milestone myself. I'm about 9 years short, so I got to take a bit of my own medicine here. I know I only look like I'm 40, but I'm actually 56. What? You'd be surprised how many 65. I don't think there's any real difference. This is the question I get. And this is why I think that. Hey, the golf club's the golf club. It has a certain loft, a certain angle. It's built to swing on a certain plane. The things that create consistency and speed are the same, whether you're a lady, a man, a junior. So, you know, it's the same game, same ball, same physics. So I think you're trying to do everything the same. The difference is, of course, as you get older, your swing starts to get a little shorter. Mine has, I know that. You lose a little flexibility. It's hard to create as much speed. It's probably hard to practice as much. So your reasonable expectations would be that everything will shrink back a little bit in terms of distances, motion, and explosiveness, but trying to do the same things. And listen, even at 65, if you don't hit the ball that far, if you can get a little more distance dialed up and hit it just a little bit further, it is so, so valuable. So just because you're a certain age, hey, you might not be like a 20-year-old, but you can usually learn to hit it like a little bit longer version of the you have. The other thing is, honestly, I talk to people all day long giving golf lessons. People play the golf course at too long a yardage. You should go to Google PGA Play It Forward. All of you, if you want, PGA Play It Forward. They've done a statistical analysis, and they can put your game in there with your yardages. The shot values tour pros have coming in, average like an 8-iron on a par 4, spinning it, getting it near the hole. It shows you at different levels of driving distance what length golf course you'd need to play to get similar shot values. It's a lot more fun to hit shorter clubs. I play the middle tees when I'm just playing for fun, occasionally the second from back. It's a pretty long golf course. I get a lot of 9-irons and 8-iron wedges in there. I have fun with it. So the tees you choose have a lot to do with that as well. Okay, thanks, Ravi. George G's Cooking Show, featuring George G's All-Purpose Barbecues. Adam from Connecticut, what is your thought on the single plane swing of Bryson DeChambeau? You know, I've watched his swing a bit. I haven't studied it a lot. One of the reasons it looks more single plane, he's kind of got the Mo Norman where the hands are really high. And so that makes it easier to look like it's on one plane. When you get the handle down like the more conventional look, hey, it would be pretty hard to stay on that plane, so it goes up a bit. I mean, listen, the guy's having phenomenal success. He's a physical specimen, the likes of which we haven't seen until Brooks Koepka. There's a few of them out there, but the guy's talented. Listen, when he was a lot thinner, he did things a little differently maybe some years ago. He was still tremendous. So I don't know that it's that makes him good. I mean, hey, he should stick with it. I just think it's his talent, his delivery, his dynamics, his innate ability to get around the golf course and find the middle of the club face. For me, I would judge single plane versus two plane primarily, not on address and some of these other things, but is the club sweeping back nicely? If your left arm, your lead arm is about where your shoulder is, that's about a middle plane backswing, maybe just above that shoulder. If you can see that shoulder at the top, you've got more of a flat single plane swing to me. And if you can see that shoulder underneath the lead arm, sort of in there, then you've got what I would call more of a two-plane upright swing. Freddie Couples would be here. Matt Kuchar would be under there. You could see that shoulder. I'd say most of the swingers, though, are about across their shoulder plane. That's the gauge that I would use. So probably not a helpful answer, but trying. Stuart Paul, love to see you in Sydney, Adam. Well, thanks, Stuart. I'd love to get there. Had an old friend moved to Melbourne, Australia, 40 years ago now. We hardly stay in touch, but there's always just something about Australia that seemed great to me. Growing up in England, there's quite an affinity with Australia, so would love to do it. It's a long way to go, but would love to. Robert Sestone, that right-hand drill worked for me after the video analysis of my swing. Oh, thanks, Robert. Robert's one of the guys that sent in a video for analysis, and I give people drills and all those video analysis as well as, to dissect their swing. So I'm glad that helped you. Appreciate that, Robert. Maxime Fugere, any advice on how to pitch around 100 yards on a very wet fairway? That is a tall order. That is not easy for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's easy to plow into the turf a bit too much, or if you hit a little behind it, the club tends to plow into wet grass easier than it does dry, stiffer grass. So hitting a little behind it's more penal when it's wet. Besides that, you're going to get water coming up off the grass, and you're going to get water on the ball, and it's going to get between the club and the ball, and that's like a lubricant. It takes spin and control off the club, so it's a difficult order. I think what I'd be trying to do, you're just trying for decent contact. I'd probably play the ball a little bit further back, not lots, and again, no jamming it in the ground, but I'd try to get a very brushing mark along the ground, just a skim, giving you some margin for error. And with the ball slightly back, you should be able to lead a bit more with the hands and get ball before ground contact or very close. So no digging. And the fact is, as I say, with all that water, you're not going to have great control or spin coming off there. So sorry if that's the case you're living in there. Maybe in the fall here, you're getting more rain. I'm not sure there. Thanks, Maxime. Bo Bloodworth. My grandson has found golf. When and how do I have him find the right clubs for him? Well, a couple of tips. I actually did a YouTube video called Teaching Golf to Kids. You might enjoy this for younger kids. You might enjoy that. Just YouTube, Scratch Golf Academy, Teaching Golf to Kids. Some ideas I've compiled from working with other pros that really specialize in that. I think you'd like it. There's some thoughts about keeping it fun and some thoughts about the kinds of things you'd want to tell them about their game and the kinds of things you'd not want to tell them. In terms of clubs, though, we're a long way ahead of when I was a lad. When I was a lad, unless you lived in London and had a lot of money over there, you weren't getting junior golf clubs. You just got some long ones and choked down and hung in there, or maybe ladies' clubs. These days, you go to the big golf, most pro shops at clubs don't have them, but you go to the big Nevada Bob's, Golf Galaxy type of places. They have USA Kids Golf. They're great, and they have them made for every height and rough age group given every 2 or 3 years. They're not that expensive. The young ones only have 3-4 clubs in there. They're terrific. USA Kids Golf, pick them up at the stores there. Hope that's helpful. It's great to see kids getting going in golf. Some of the tips in that YouTube video, by the way, because they're really not my ideas, they're things I've heard over the years and found to be true, because I teach quite a few grandkids and juniors as well. Really, really gets them having fun early, and they stick with it. So important. Okay. That was Bo. Elizabeth, I'm not sure it's Elizabeth or Elizabeta Wallach. Hello, Adam. It's Elizabetha Wallach from Largo, Florida. How do I stop the typing on this text a little off here? How do I stop rushing the downswing? What is the first move? That's, if you were there at the beginning of this show, in fact, the microphone may not have been working. That's exactly what I'm working on, other than my little thing I've been describing in the backswing. I think you've got to make some swings where you literally just stop at the top for a second, not with a ball, and just let yourself engage just at that speed. Then hit a couple of shots. And then you build some speed. The key is not so much not rushing the downswing, it's getting the sequence right. So if you start to use the ground in your lower body, then your trunk begins to pull, and then you start to see some arm speed. If you can get the sequence right with that drill, then you want to have it with plenty of energy. You don't want it to be too slow. So I'd work more sequence than that, but I'd work on it nice and slowly like I just showed you. And I think you'll make some progress with it. Okay. Greg in Ladera Ranch, California. Love my lag shot. Well, terrific. Well, guess what? There it is, right there. I'm glad you like it. I really like that thing. I've seen a couple of products along those lines over the years, but this thing has a great feel to it. It's fun. That's a good thing, by the way, for helping you with your rhythm starting down. For Elizabetha, the lag shot's terrific for that. So I'm glad you like it. It's fun to hit with. It's a very impressive training tool. Thanks. I'm glad you got it. I'm glad you agree. As I say, I don't endorse too many things. I'm not a big teaching aid fan. I actually have a few things like hockey sticks and alignment rods and boards and hula hoops here that aren't really teaching aids, but that thing's really fun. I don't know if you got the driver and the wedge, but they're great too. You can have some fun with it as well. James Russell, specifically, thanks for the comment there, Greg. James Russell, specifically the closing of the club face. Should we close them consciously? Well, we kind of dealt with that already. Of course, you asked that question before we dealt with it. So I'm picking on you there. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to do what you have to do. So if you're not getting it closed, for a while at least, you've got to do it consciously a little bit till you can get the feel. And again, like I said earlier, overdo it. Play around. Get some hooks going. Really work that thing. I'd check the grip video if it's a chronic problem. And yeah, once you've mastered it, once you can hook it easily, then you can kind of take your mind off it and go back to neutral. So for the short run, you probably will have to think about it consciously. Gary was hitting some balls in the other room there, and he's a good left-handed player, but if there's anything, tends to leave the face open. So we were just working on that a week ago. Maybe you were out here, something like that. And so out there you were. Don't say that. Okay. The word shank just came up.
It's very easy for you to, yeah, it is, you know, and then people go, yeah, it's so difficult to close that face. We know what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, I know. Again, making sure the grip, overdo it. Have some fun. Hit some low snap hooks. Don't just try to hit neutral. Gary's talking about closing that face. Yeah, come on over. This is Gary, the brains of the outfit. Want a club?
Yeah. My biggest problem is I leave the face open. I swing real hard, so when I come through, I tend to leave it open. So I've always worked on closing that face, and strengthening my grip is one of the biggest things that I've done because it just allows you to close the face.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier.
You know, so I started with a very neutral grip like this, and then Adam had me work on getting that cupped wrist. Like
he's a lefty, so that's his lead hand.
And so it's so much easier.
Oh, it's so much easier.
To close the face when you're already, you know.
Well, think of it this way. As a lefty, if you had to jerk a car over this way, would you grab the steering wheel here? Over here? Over here, of course. So then you can turn the wheel harder. So grab the club over there. And sometimes maybe, wouldn't you agree, Gary, overdoing a strong grip for a month or two to get a feel, then you can work off it.
I was literally in the other room working on this.
Yeah.
Because I'm really trying to get that.
Mostly because he's bored listening to me talk. But yeah.
And so what I was working on right there was, as I get to the top, as soon as I start, I'm closing the face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like even just practicing with that.
Yeah,
you know,
it really helps. It's hard to overdo it.
You did. Remember this one?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that drill's a good one. Hey, one other comment along the lines of what Gary's saying, the grip thing's critical. This is probably 3-4 people that talked about closing the face. One of the things I think really good golfers do, and listen, I'm not a tour player, but by most people's standards, I'm fairly skilled. Anyone that's a 2-3 handicap or better that I've just about ever seen, one of the things they do well consistently is they're good at creating some snap out there, not breakdown, not complete loss of control, but they get a bit of pop down there, and that transfer of energy really helps that face square up. A lot of people, they just pull so hard, and there's so much pull here, there's nothing against which to crack the face closed.
Honestly, that's where the lag shot comes in handy so well.
Well, that's a great point. We were just talking about the lag shot. Yeah.
So much drill how you can't.
Look at this beauty right here. Now, you wouldn't think you could hit with that. You can hit just fine with this. Another property of the lag shot, I should have picked this up because it has a lot of torque where the toe can twist each way. By the way, if you get one of these things, We're having the instructional videos put at the Scratch Golf app,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Friday, it's going to be at the app. We have a 10 video series on how to practice with this thing and get the most out of it and avoid certain pitfalls. You'd really like this thing. It's a lot of fun. This thing is great for rhythm starting down because you just can't pull this thing too hard or you have no control. It's a little heavier than the regular club. It naturally loads. You should see people on video, right? I mean, the thing looks like this coming down. And that's people that aren't great players. And once that thing's really loaded, brother, then you can really let it spring and you really get a heightened feel of that. And I'm telling you, I was talking to Wayne DeFrancesco the other day, well-known teaching pro, Maryland Teaching Hall of Fame, and he's played in, I think, 11 major championships. So I said, try this lag shot. We had Gary send him one. He got out there and he said, wow, took me a few swings to get that face square, so you have to kind of accentuate that. But as Gary said, it really helps the spring. And then he said, when I grab my club, and he's a great player, I hit some big slinging draws, he said, which I kind of thought was fun. It really got the feel in there. So yeah, for rhythm coming down and building the lag so it snaps better, hard to beat this thing.
Well, you know what was the hidden thing that we learned from that?
What's that?
Was closing the face.
Yeah.
I never thought it was going to be like, to help you close the face, but I struggle with that. When I can finally hit it with the lag shot, go to my clubs, you'll square the club every time.
Yeah, because when I was sent the prototype of the lag shot, which is basically what it is now, it's very similar to that. I loved everything about it, but I was like, boy, this face is easy with all that torque to leave open. I mean, I say even me, I'm not a slicer, and I was hitting some fades. But I suddenly realized, hey, that's the beauty of the thing. One of the real features is it forces you to accentuate that. And I tell you, if you hit a few straight ones with a lag shot and you get your club, you'll hit some beautiful draws. So I would recommend it for sure. Okay, where are we at here? That was James. So here we are with Dwayne Paschal from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I lived in Virginia Beach when I was 1 year old. My father, English, Royal Air Force. My mother was American. He had a posting over here in the Royal Air Force, probably, I don't know, early 60s. And anyway, I remember none of it, because I was only one. But I hear it's great. So where do you recommend playing the ball in your stance on your irons? You play short irons back. Do you play short irons back? I don't recommend playing it back. Listen, if someone's really kind of, let's say, just old and stiff, hey, they're not going to get the kind of weight transfer and sort of lag maybe that a more athletic golfer would get maybe a little bit back. The problem with playing it too far back to me is twofold. Number one, it almost makes you not want to shift your weight, move athletically, or you go right past the ball. And number two, you start hitting way down on the thing too much. You don't want to hit down on it that much. Now, if it's in deep rough or something, you want to dig down, sure, play it back. So my recommendation is middle as the benchmark. I play it a little bit forward of middle, just kind of suits my swing. I'd say middle. If you're a little older and you just haven't quite mastered the forward shaft, lean slightly back of middle. Any further back than that, though, and you are going to start hitting down on it too much. David Duval, someone like that in his heyday, had so much hip rotation and lag. He played it most of the way to the front instep, but
Does that create spin when it's in the back?
no, not really. It just makes you hit down more. So I got to play 3 holes of David Duval in a corporate event. Ledbetter and myself and one other guy were doing, and he was the guest pro. It was a big high-end event. So they were missing a client, so they said, you got to go play. So I was like, well, great, I'll play with him. 3 holes. This is when this is about 5 months after he shot that 59, like, I don't know, 1999, I think this was. And it was impressive. He beat the heck out of me for 3 holes, I'll tell you that. But it was fun to watch. I realized I should stick to teaching when I played 3 holes with him. Okay, let's see. Bill Rundle. He's a nice guy, though, very nice guy. Took a couple of golf lessons from his dad when David was a kid, so that was kind of interesting. Bill Rundle, I've been working with the Swing Tempo app, and my swing is way faster than the fastest setting. When I try to slow down, I start mishitting. The sequencing, wow, I tell you, that fast setting is pretty quick. I don't know if any tour players are faster than that. I mean, hey, you got to do what works for you, but that's something I really haven't heard of much before. I think I would, on our Swing Tempo app, Bill there is at the fastest setting, and that's too slow for him. And when he tries to go to that setting, he's struggling. So, hey, you got to do what works for you, but I'm telling you that should be quick enough. Well, yeah, I think more smooth, and I would take some tension out of your grip, get a little bounce in your setup, and just get that thing starting away a little smoother would probably, not slowly, but a little more smoothly, a little less tension. It's hard to get the club back and down that quickly if you're not pretty tight and ramped up. So take a little air out of it. But, you know, hey, at the end of the day, you've got to do what works for you. Smooth is the key. Tom Watson had a very fast swing in his heyday, but it was fluid. It was wonderful. David Bauer, struggling with transition between the move away to the upward hinging of the wrists, keeping the club outside the hands while hinging. Thanks, David. Dave. Well, that can be a problem. I mean, I think, here's what I would say. If you get your wrist too active, that thing's probably getting inside. So we don't want to do that. If you do two things, though. One, feel. So we're trying to keep the club in front of us, trying to keep this convex, concave angle. But as you do it, keep a little downward pressure on the handle. So if you had an imaginary tabletop there without any wrist action this way, feel like gradually as this shoulder comes down, you can push the handle slightly down towards the ground, just slightly. And when you push that down, the other end starts to rise. And I think you could blend those together. I might as well do the preset drill, put it on a tee, hinge it, don't create any space, pause fully, and then just pivot back. And the key is don't take the club back. Just keep it hinged, pivot back and hit a little shot like that. I do it without the ball initially. Here, pause. And you might start to get the feeling for what it feels like to have the club up, which is handle down and club more in front of you. So I think those two images would be good. Handle low at the start would be probably the best one. Just begins to ease that down and the club head up without the sense of a lot of risk. Okay, imagery. Stanley Hall. Is mental imagery a part of your golf game? Yeah, I mean, it is. Now, I hate to say it, Jack Nicklaus, I don't know, I hate to say this, Jack Nicklaus used to talk about, he calls it going to the movies in his book. He's kind of a golf genius, as you could imagine. But he talked about seeing the flight of the ball, could be a fade, a low shot. Once he'd seen the flight of the ball, then he started to see in his mind's eye the swing that would create that. And then he'd kind of go in and do that. And I'm not sure I've quite gotten to where Jack is. I definitely haven't. Let me rephrase that. But I've certainly found that mental imagery for my swing and for my motion is very helpful. Your subconscious mind doesn't like or need a whole lot of poking from your conscious mind when it's trying to run a program. Just say, hey, get the coffee cup, tie those shoes. If you give it something to do, it figures it out. So a good mental imagery, whatever, balance in the golf club, centeredness, a feeling of using the ground, I think is great. And certainly if you can apply that a little bit to hitting a shot. I find it easier to do if I'm in some trees and got to get the ball out from under there and shape it. Somehow that wakes up my imagination. It actually helps. Maybe you've helped me out. Maybe I should start working on that a little bit more as I go. Read some Jack Nicklaus stuff. He's got some great ideas about that. Okay, let's see. That was David. No, that was Stanley. Scott, how are we doing for time? Well, we've got 10 minutes left. We'll rifle through a few more. Scott, hi Adam. Scott Minotti from Port Fairy, Victoria, Australia. 2 Australians in this. That's great. I'm having trouble not collapsing my back leg on the downswing. Geez, I'm trying to picture that. Collapsing. I think probably what you're talking about is kind of squatting and losing your balance. I've had a tendency when I was a young golfer to do that. I don't think I do that so much anymore, but yeah, that's a problem. Once that happens, you probably stop moving and then you just sort of flick it with your hands trying to find the golf ball. I find nearly always, if that's what you're talking about, I'm pretty sure it is nearly always, it's a reaction of your mind to the fact that your subconscious senses there's too much weight in the heels and it starts to push forward like that. It's almost an involuntary thing. Balance is about, your subconscious will override you for balance. It doesn't have to be in a golf setting. So I bet it's that. And many times I had this problem when I was a youngster. I'd say, well, I'm going to really stay back here now and not let it happen. It would agitate it. So I would try to feel balanced more forward. And I would make a lot of practice backswings until you felt like, okay, there's a nice little stretch of my right side, but I'm just as balanced as I could be, nothing to agitate. And I think from there, you can begin to work through it a little bit and start to work it out. And sometimes hit some balls in slow motion, but if you're fighting it, it's probably not going to show up when you do full speed. So hopefully that's helpful for you. And I appreciate, Scott, you hanging in there with us from Australia. I would guess it's probably, what is it here? 8:20. It's probably 8:15 in the morning. It's about 12 hours difference in Australia tomorrow, that is. David Lintz, how about getting greater swing speed? You know, I was doing you may have heard of an instructor, Andrew Rice, he's a Golf Channel guy. He's an old friend of mine. He's a great instructor too. And he was a Revolution Golf guy. We were doing a video together the other day and we were talking about that. And we came up with 3 notions. Driver, let's say. Number 1, don't get too slow going back. Get some motion, because if you go too slowly, you're either not going to hit it very far or you start to jerk the club. So get some motion. Second thing, get your hands to move as far away from the golf ball as you can, up and behind you, like towards the scratch golf sign. The more motion you create, as long as you have balance and you don't lose structure, the more space you create between your hands and the ball. Not only is that stored energy, but that's more time you get to build speed here. You don't move those very far, you don't have much space to build speed. That would be number 2. And thirdly, there's a lot of science behind this training for speed. Let's say driver again, tee up 3 balls, hit one smoothly, and then hit the next 2 as fast as you can hit them. As long as you don't get tense and lose your balance, as much speed as you can create, then back off it again. A few minutes later, ramp up and do a few like that. Train for speed. You get those 3 things there. You won't need to watch our video, that's number 1, but you get those 3 things there, I think you'll see some improvement there. William Bell, how do you best internalize changes you're making to your swing so that it becomes automatic? Are there any special practice techniques to help with the learning process? Bill from Darien, Connecticut. You know, one of the bonus courses for annual and life members is PGA practice strategies. That, I'm telling you, you know, we've got a lot of courses and bonuses. I'm not trying to tease you up into an annual membership or something, but that, of all the courses, I think, and I'm not the marketing guru, that's for sure, but that's one of my favorite courses. That is full of stuff about how to internalize swing changes, how to get in touch with that stuff. I really recommend you have a go at that. That's what I've picked up in 15, 20 years of working, well, 40 years working on my game, but last 15 or 20, 25 around being around some great teachers, mental coaches, PGA practice strategies. Is that what it's called, isn't it, Gary?
I believe so.
Yeah, just good mental pictures. So much to it. There's a lot of flaws and pitfalls there. I really would love you to get that course. So
If a lot of them might have it, it comes, the drop 5 has the upsell for it.
yeah, the Drop 5 course, if you came in that way, that has an upsell to get the PGA practice strategies. If you really can't get a hold of it, send us a message and say, we'll figure out something, I'm sure. But I think you'd enjoy that. I would recommend that for anybody. That's my favorite course that I've ever done. Anyway, hope that's helpful to you. It's like sometimes you get these, he's just walked out of the room. Sometimes you get these pop stars or something, not that I'm comparing myself with that, and they say, hey, what about these songs, these are the best ones you ever did. You say, well, that's not my favorite. I like this one you've never heard of. So, however, the marketing people saw better. So anyway, there's my thoughts there. Michael St. John, can you swing to the top, pause, and then slowly talk us through how the hips move, more lateral slide or rotation? Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So, and hey, listen, not every great player does it the same. There's a few players. Justin Thomas is more rotary. Freddie Couples is more slide. The real benchmark there is the more up I think, the more you need to drop the club in, although Justin Thomas is actually fairly upright. He's just super flexible. But generally, the more you want to drop it in, the more slide you need like that. Here's what I think is the look, though. To me, you know, what are you trying to do with the hips? Well, I mean, you don't hit the golf ball with your hips. You're trying to do a couple of things. You're trying to create load on the club, like throwing a football. When you move them first, it creates extra load. So that's it. We want to change direction there like that. And then we want to create some force off the ground to push that thing out there. If I had a heavy bucket of water here, I mean, I couldn't throw it far like that. If I grabbed the ground a bit and pushed, I could get more leverage and more force out there. So first thing you want to do, I think, is create that change of direction. I think ideally your hip joint, which isn't there, it's about there, would move to where it's about over your ankle joint, something like probably that. So if you draw a line up from the outside of your ankle, your knee will have gone past that line a little bit. And not only do you want it to move there, it should be rotating a little bit, and you should be feeling some pressure. When you can get some pressure in the ground, I love the image of an empty Coke can under your foot and you squash it. When you can get some pressure down, by then the club's about here, then you can snap up and really use those legs well. So those are the 3 things: hip about over ankle, combination. That's the amount of slide, some rotation too, and pressure so that you can really use the ground force to whack that thing. I'm still working on it, by the way, but that's what you're trying to do. Farry, 1450. I usually hit the ball clean with an iron, but I never get a divot. What am I doing wrong? Well, I would say, listen, the true bottom of the golf swing happens when the shaft gets vertical. That's as low as that club's ever going to get before starting up again. So if you can consistently, let's say the end of my glove, right there, the heel of my glove is the ball. If you can get the shaft past the ball so that you're hitting it with shaft lean, you're at liberty then to push slightly against the ground. So if the club's on the ground, touching the grass at impact with lean, it will shove into the ground a little bit. Most times, people are too far back, and their subconscious knows if I hit the ground, it's probably going to be a little behind the ball, and it starts to get used to picking it. The clubs begin to rise a little bit because the shaft's like that. So probably, again, not trying to hit savagely down, but shaft lean, getting the handle past the ball, then you get pressure against the ground. Try it on a small scale. Look at the impact videos at the iron course and the full swing course. They would be relevant there. Just a few more here then. Todd Goldsmith, I had my DTL down the line swing reviewed on the app. The instructor suggested my right shoulder moving more down rather than out at the start of my downswing. Can you demonstrate this to give a visual, please? Sure. So a lot of golfers, they have too much chest rotation early in the downswing. And what we're trying to do, I think, if you picture, let's say, skipping a rock. Okay, certainly the hips move, certainly a bump here. But if the club lags properly and gets closer to you, it tends to hold this back a little bit, which I like. And as the hips move laterally, you get a little bit of that side bend, and that equates to the right shoulder getting lower. So I'm not sure I try to get it lower, but I think if you get good hip bump and good lag, you probably are going to get the right look in your right shoulder. Most likely from the front view, when you don't make a good swing, the shaft is too far out, too far away from you, and that's too active. So hopefully those are good thoughts for you. Glad you got that review. Todd, Neil and Susan Silverman, uphill and downhill and side hill lies. What should we do? Well, we got a whole, I hate to say this, this is also in our bonus courses for, I think it's annual members and life members. There's some really great courses there. And one of them is trouble shots. We've got trouble shots around the green, all sorts of sticky situations you get in, then trouble shots on the golf course. That would include coming out of trees, uphill, downhill, side hill, all sorts of odd lies around bunkers and things like that. The basic idea, though, you want to make as many adjustments as you can with your setup. So if I'm a little robotic golfer and I've got a nice little impact on this flat lie, picture me as a little plastic man. I just want to tilt myself if it's downhill so the swing applies exactly the same. Certainly, I'd probably play the ball back a bit and expect a lower ball flight. And again, on the upslope, I'd tilt a little bit with the slope this way, and would expect more height, so I'd need a little bit more club doing that. But if you get a chance to get those courses, those bonus courses, these aren't setup questions, by the way, where we're trying to sell all these bonus courses. They're good stuff, though. Okay, Tony Farrow, does club fitting really work for amateurs? Yes, I think it really works. Now, I would say this, especially driver fitting, but I would say this, until you've got a reasonable strike of the ball, club path into the ball is decent, contact's fairly good, I don't think I'd fit before I do that. If you've got some quirks in your swing and all this stuff, they'll just fit you for that. Get it reasonably good through impact, then I think fitting is great. You really need someone with a TrackMan or a flight scope. If they don't have that, I wouldn't get fitting from them. Okay, Mark Marner, how close should you keep your upper arms to the torso during the swing? I'm from Fort Dodge, Iowa. Well, as a right-handed golfer, I'd say the left arm is going to stay fairly close, but slide up my shirt a little bit. It's not stuck, but it's pretty close. The right arm would be roughly at a right angle, so it's fairly close at the start. There's a little bit of space late in the backswing. And then in the downswing, hey, as I lag the club, that trail arm's going to get closer to me again. And through impact, again, that's where I'd feel the most connection, address and impact, and certainly that lead arm should feel fairly snug, and the right arm reasonably close to you. And again, in the follow-through, they'll start to gap and fold a bit that way. So that would be my thinking on that. I hope it's helpful to you. It's actually, when you just do a swing in slow motion, it's kind of, let's say, natural. It's the simplest way to do it when you really go slowly and look at it. It's not, you shouldn't have to force it to do that. C. Bernstein, swinging too fast, how to get tempo right before a round. Use that tempo trainer on the app. I don't know if you've tried that. That thing is great because it doesn't get you too slow. This, yeah, let me get...
Demo the swing.
Okay, let me go up here. Here's the Scratch Golf Academy app. We get in there. As soon as it opens up, tools, swing tempo trainer, putting tempo trainer, green reading trainer, all sorts of fun stuff here. Swing tempo trainer. You'll get the video on how to select the right one and to use it. I'll X that out. I tend to like to use, or will I X that out? I tend to like to use the 24/8 option.
Sit away from it.
Beep, beep, beep. So it's 1, 2, 3. And as I explained in that video there, start with just 1 and 3. You really should watch the little video. Yeah, here's the fastest one the chap earlier was using.
It's not even that fast. That's the one I use.
Probably yours. These things are great. I'll tell you, they not only get you in good tempo, not too slow, not too quick. Again, look at the video to determine which one's best for you and how to get good at using it. Because when you first hear those beeps, you're like, what the heck's going on? It's pretty easy to use if you watch the video. But secondly, they get the thinking out of there a little bit. They kind of get your rhythm going where you're feeling that stuff, especially right before a round. We've got a whole series of videos that are free on the app for the warm-up, and that factors in there. Definitely check that out, and I think it'd be good for you. So it's fluid, smooth, but not slow. Let's see. Got just a couple more. I know we're sort of running low on time here. That was C. Bernstein, Joe Williams, Virginia here. Okay, Virginia. I reread Hogan's 5 fundamentals during quarantine. Are there any fundamentals that don't apply to the modern swing? I don't think so, really. You know, I mean, listen, he was a genius. There's no question about it. He had ability to control the ball, perhaps like nobody else has ever done in quite the same way. And certainly he was in a period of time where they really didn't grow up with any video to speak of at all. And the video they did have then didn't have any kind of shutter speed. So he had his own feels and sensations. A few of the things in there, he talks about that twine around his arms that are dressed like that. He doesn't look like that. He looks like this. Now, when he hits it, he looks like that. I think some of the ball position things are probably, I'm not sure if he really did that, but he doesn't look like that when I see films of him. But for the most part, I think it's great. I just think he's a great historical guy to read about. So other than a few things he talks about that I don't think he really did, or not exactly the way he thinks he did them, pretty much it's still current. I think it's a great look. The ball position stuff, like I say, is a little off. I'm a huge Hogan fan, though. I think you would enjoy, it's a little bit different book, a book by Chris Chetter, T-C-H-E-T-T-E-R. She was a longtime LPGA star. Went to college in Fort Worth at TCU. That's where Ben Hogan lived. And he's older. This is like 1978 or something. So she was able to practice there as one of the college team people, and he was a member there, and he started taking an interest in her and started coaching her a bit. It became kind of like a father-son thing. They were great friends for 25 years, just great anecdotes about her time with Ben Hogan, what he was like around the club. You might enjoy that book. It's called Mr. Hogan, the Man I Knew. You would enjoy that. Okay. Thanks, Virginia. Okay, 3 more. Leslie Gross, using lag shot with a net at home to improve release. Just played first round after 3 months of lockdown. Suddenly big hooks appeared. How to stop opening up shoulders and downswing. Okay, that's pretty normal when you've used, as I said, when you've used the lag shot that much. I like when you use the lag shot to use it for several minutes, then your club, then it, and then your club, that sort of thing. You've been stuck outside where you couldn't see the ball flight. But if you're consistently squaring it with the lag shot, you will tend to hook it a bit with your club. Again, if you've been doing it for a month or 2, you probably have it ingrained there a little bit. I would, honestly, 2 suggestions. Just hit some with your club. Give your subconscious mind a chance to clear it up. I bet within a couple of days, that you start to hit it straight again. The mind's incredible with that. One of my big regrets growing up as a junior golfer and working so hard, I just treated my subconscious mind like it was just a useless, throwaway piece of garbage. I suffered for it. Instead of just letting it solve problems and sort things out, I was always trying to fix stuff. So swing a bit, it'll sort itself out. If not, again, you've got to feel like the heel is a little bit more ahead of the toe at impact. So hit a few shots where you deliberately don't twist the club open as you swing, but at impact, heel ahead of toe till you're hitting a few pushes, then back to neutral. I'm sure the combination of those two things will sort it out. I bet you got good tempo and good lag from all that practice with it, though. I hope so, Leslie. David Philbin, slow motion view of hands at top, and then as you reach the release point, asked this an hour ago. Oh, sorry if I missed it. Slow motion view of hands at the top, and then as you reach the release point. Okay, well, hands at the top, there's no real, this isn't what you're asking, but there's no total top of the backswing. That is to say, while the club's still going back, there's the beginning of the movement in the other direction. But momentarily, the hands pause, but the body doesn't pause. So I'd say they're in the slot, they're passive and patient, club gets a little closer to you, and then at impact again, right arm isn't fully straight, but it's mostly straight, right hands pushing against left hand, and club, because the handle's forward, tilts this way a little bit, and I'd say it's like that. From this view, hey, I'm in my slot, I don't want to attack the golf ball, I just want to let the club stay in space and let that right arm get a little bit longer and let that thing work down there in that downswing, helping me get down there on plane. There's a whole video, there's 2 videos on the transition in the new full swing course that'll be out shortly, right, Gary? I've worked hard on this course, and there's some really good stuff, I think, that'll help you about how the right arm works in the start of the downswing. All of you folks, I feel like this is going to be really helpful for people. Tyler Scott, thoughts on Mike Adams, biomechanics, measure elbow to middle knuckle elbow. Yeah, that's the Laws Golf leverage arc width. I think Mike's a bright guy, and I think a lot of thought went into that. He wasn't solo in it. A good friend of mine, Doc Sutty, was part of that. I think TJ Tomasi. I think it's good stuff. You know, I think it certainly benchmarks a few things. For those of you that don't know it, it's certain body styles and how you can determine your relative to golf swing, one of 3 body styles, and then a general swing preferences for those styles. I like it. I think it's very good. I mean, like anything, you know, you put these things in there and it sort of boxes people directly to certain categories. And maybe there's a little more leeway in there, but I think the logic of it's very well thought out. And I think Mike's a bright guy, bright guy, one of the really top people in the world of golf instruction. Okay, folks. We ran over a bit. We appreciate your time and your interest. We appreciate your interest in scratch golf, the lag shot. I hope you're enjoying that. Some of you had some great comments there. And stay well.